At the conclusion of Hilchos Tanius, the Rambam ends off with a seemingly straightforward halacha. The Rambam writes that in the times of Mashiach, the 4 fast days, Som Gedalia, Asar B'Teves, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av, will be null and void and cease to exist. The Rambam adds that these fast days will transform to be Yom Tovim, which are days of Sason V'Simcha. At first glance, the Rambam seems to make a lot of sense. The days that commemorate the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash will no longer be necessary when there is a Beis HaMikdash during the times of Mashiach. It is then logical that we will no longer have to observe these fast days. What remains unaccounted for, however, is why will these days become Yom Tovim during the times of Mashiach? When there is a Beis HaMikdash, it makes sense that we no longer have to mourn the Beis HaMikdash. But how does it explain and account for these fast days becoming Yom Tovim? The Rambam, beginning the first parak of Hilchos Tanius, discussing how Bnei Yisrael are supposed to respond during an Eis Sarah, a time of need. In parak Aleph Halacha Beis, he writes that when a tzara comes, the tzibur should yell out in prayer and blow the trumpets, and that these things are midarchei hatshuva, and are what caused the tzibur to remove the tzara from upon them. When there is a threat facing the community, the proper way to respond is by doing tshuva, and that tshuva is what ultimately neutralizes the threat. The Rav quoted in the Masorah Journal thinks that there's significance to the Rambam putting the 4 fast days in the context of the rest of Hilchos Tanius. He explains that what we are doing on these fast days isn't just mourning a tragedy that happened to our ancestors thousands of years ago. Rather, the lack of a Beis HaMikdash is actually a tzara for us today. As a result, just as by any other tzara, we have the obligation to do tshuva. As the Rambam writes in the beginning of Parak Hey, our actions and the actions of our ancestors caused them and us to have these tzaras. The Rav says that it is clear from the Rambam that the tzaras caused by these days directly impact us and are thus considered our tzaras. What emerges is that the lack of a Beis HaMikdash is a tzara that is directly impacting our community and mandates us to respond via tshuva in order to remove the tzara. Based on this approach of the Rav, we might have an answer to the question that we started with. These fast days are supposed to serve as wake-up calls. In the words of the Rambam, the goal of them is l'orer halavavos v'liftoach darkei tshuva, to awaken our hearts and to help us begin the ways of tshuva. If these wake-up calls are successful, and we respond properly via introspection that ultimately leads to tshuva, that will enable us to remove our communal tzara, the lack of a Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, during the times of Mashiach, we will be sitting on Har HaBayis with the Beis HaMikdash in all of its glory and grandeur right in front of us. We will wonder to ourselves, what did we do to deserve this? The answer is making the most of our wake-up calls and using them as a catalyst for change, self-improvement, and tshuva. If we're staring at the Beis HaMikdash, it means that we were successful, and that is what we were celebrating on the fast days to become Yom Tovim during the times of Mashiach. May we be zocheh to respond to the wake-up call of Tisha B'Av, and as a result, be zocheh next year to be celebrating the Yom Tov of Tisha B'Av with the rebuilt Beis HaMikdash during the times of Mashiach.